Welcome to Future of Flushing. I'm Vito Calisi. That's Jonathan Barrett. And today, Christmas Day, this episode is getting released. So we figured we'd do a little themed episode for you guys and give you the 12 pitchers of Christmas.
Yeah, Vito, there was so many big storylines, so many big arms that really kind of developed or were developed last season, stepped up, emerged during the 2023 season. And we are today going to go through some of the guys that we think could make an impact, not just somewhere in the system, but for the New York Mets in 2024. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to put a bow on the 2023 season and let you guys know who to keep an eye on for 2024.
And the first one we're going to do is the first guy John and I ever got a chance to speak to, and somebody we bring up quite a bit who I think sometimes it's a little bit much, but we love the guy. It's Mike Vasil. Started the year in AA, promoted to AAA, and just ended the year dominating, right?
Yeah, Vasil, like you said, was fantastic to start the year in AA. He led the league in strikeout rate minus walk rate. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. Went up to AAA, and that's a challenge for a lot of pitchers for one particular reason, and it is the rule difference. Something that not a lot of people talk about, the automatic ball strike system. And Vito, they use two different rule sets during the week. So Monday through Thursday, they're using an automated strike zone fully, and then on the weekend, there's a challenge system in place. The automatic strike zone, pitchers have to be pinpoint perfect. You're not fooling the computer like you could do a human eye strike zone with an actual human behind the plate calling balls and strikes. So that's always an adjustment. But Mike really showed that he kind of broke through at the AAA level when he took a no-hitter into the ninth inning later in the season. So we saw him pitch in spring training last year in a big league game against the Atlanta Braves. The changeup was on display. Of course, the Futures game, he was the Mets representative. And when you talk about pitchers that could help the Mets in the starting rotation especially, you need 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. We see it every year, especially as teams start to transition to six-man rotations, which is becoming kind of a trend in the major leagues. Mike Vasil's at the forefront of that group of Met pitchers, that young crop that could get a chance early on.
Before I started this episode, I said to John, let's keep it short. Let's not go too in deep.
That wasn't that in depth.
I want you at home, you the listener. I want you to keep track of how much he talks for one period of time. And then I want you to know what my life is like, but I love him. Now, one more thing about Mike Vasil that John here brought up. Yes, that's like a changing of, routine every single day pretty much in your career. Imagine if at work, every day you showed up to your job and they said, hey, it's Tuesday, whole different set of rules. You wouldn't like that very much.
No, not at all. And it's a challenge that a lot of young pitchers face in AAA. Now, these rules might one day make their way to the major leagues. Right now, we're not quite there yet. We'll see if it comes to fruition. But one thing to really put a bow, again, on the Mike Vasil conversation is over his last 8 starts of the season, he allowed 2 runs or less in 5 of them. So he really buckled down, really hunkered down, and showed that he got used to those rules. He overcame. Also, let's be honest, I mean, you're facing older competition. You're facing better hitters at the AAA level compared to AA, guys making better swing decisions, guys that have had experience in the major leagues. So it's a totally different cup of coffee once you make the leap from AA to AAA. Mike was really good, 18 strikeouts over 10 innings in his last 2 starts. Excited to see what 2024 has for him. Buzzer off.
Let's go to the next player in our 12 players of Christmas. That would be 2 turtle doves. I'm not really sure. That would be Christian Scott, though, who, let's just start off, minor league pitcher of the year. I mean, there's not much of a better year you can get with that when it comes to being a pitcher in the Mets player development system. Had such an increase in innings pitched this year, really proved himself. Somebody that I don't think had too many eyes on him before the start of the year and ended this year being somebody that fans really look at as somebody who can make an impact as soon as next year to some people.
Yeah, Christian Scott played his college baseball at University of Florida, one of the blue blood programs in college baseball. So that was a loaded program. Christian was pitching out of the bullpen at Florida because of how much depth there was in the starting rotation. Brandon Sproat, one of those guys, want to mention that. But then the Mets get their hands on him, and Christian Scott flourished in 2023. He was really one of the breakout pitchers in the system, and it's for 2 reasons, Vito. Number one, he has pinpoint control. He puts the ball where he wants to put the ball, and that was showcased with how great he was in the strikeout to walk ratio, 107 Ks to just 12 walks. 12 walks across 3 levels. That's insane. And number 2, he's got 3 good pitches he could throw in any count. A solid 4-seam fastball. He runs up to 98 miles an hour with great depth. A slider that he has, a wipeout pitch to righties. And then he mixes the changeup and he throws it to righties and lefty. So Christian Scott was really, like I said, the breakout pitcher of 2023, if you would, in the Mets organization. He's got the goods. And here's one thing I want to point out. We're talking about a couple starting pitchers here. This conversation will have both starters and relievers as we go along, but no one's exclusive to any one role. There are starters who could be used as relievers to get their feet wet in the major leagues because of innings limits, because the Mets might need help at certain points during the season in that area. So it's not a bad thing for guys that are starters by trade to be used out of the bullpen. We've seen it a lot. You look at a guy like Brandon Woodruff with the Brewers back in the day. He came up as a reliever. How about recently retired Adam Wainwright? Not going to talk about his bullpen exploits early in his career too in depth, but it's a trend we've seen over time. Don't be surprised if some of the guys we're talking about as starters wind up debuting as relievers. I'm done.
You are done. And you know what? I just want to bring up one relief pitcher who we saw come up this year, Grant Hartwig. Found out me and Grant Hartwig have the same birthday.
And I don't know when this episode's going to go out, so I don't want to...
On December 25th. I'm literally wearing a Santa hat. It's going out on...
it's going out on Monday.
It's going out on Christmas Day.
All
It's
right.
going out just days from now.
So that's a week after the
We're
birthday.
recording this
the 19th.
on February 10th of last year. We've made all of these predictions 8 months ago.
A little crystal ball action. All right, who's next, Vito?
Next up is Dom Hamel. Dom Hamel, another guy, another incredible year. I'm going to stop saying another guy, another incredible year, because the whole reason they're on this list is because they had an incredible year. But started last spring training in the intra-squad game. So he started off with enough attention on him that he was able to get some action against Mets major leaguers, help them get used to the season, warmed up. And then he went over to the WBC, played for Team Puerto Rico with some Mets teammates like Francisco Lindor, who he also had a good appearance against in the intra-squad game we just talked about. But Dom spent the entire season at Double-A, and I think something should be said about the Double-A team this year, about don't look at player development as a linear thing, as we always say. Player development is not linear. The Double-A team this year was stacked. The Binghamton Rumble Ponies, as we've said many times, will likely be a team that Mets fans look back on, the 2023 Rumble Ponies, and say, what a team that was to watch. So just an incredible thing to see him in the Double-A all year. 21.1% strike-to-walk ratio, one of the best in the Eastern League this year, John.
Yeah, he was right there with Richard Fitz, former Yankee farmhand, of course. Fitz now a Red Sox in the Alex Verdugo deal.
You love Richard Fitz.
Richard Fitz had a really good season. There were a lot of Yankee fans who didn't know who Richard Fitz was, and there were two reasons why I was appalled by that. But yeah, he was one of the best pitchers. Dom Hamel was right there.
He was at Somerset when we went, right? He was starting that game?
I don't remember who pitched for the Somerset Patriots that night. I know Tyler Stewart was on the mound for the Binghamton Rumble Ponies that night, but I do know that Dom Hamel and Fitz went head-to-head in Game 2 of the Eastern League Division Series last year in September in Somerset, and Dom Hamel threw probably his best start of the season. And this is a guy that struck out 11 batters on 3 occasions and had a 2.45 ERA from July through the end of the season. He was that good in that start, 7 2/3 dominant innings. Could have gone longer if not for just a terrible call by the home plate umpire on a base runner interference rule, which I don't want to go too deep in the rabbit hole about because we have a time limit here, clearly. But yeah, Dom Hamel, look, we're very excited about all these guys we're going to talk about. I don't think there's enough hype around Dom Hamel's name. I think Dom Hamel, you watch Dom Hamel, the slider, the tight dotted slider. Spin rate is a buzzword we hear a lot when we talk about pitchers.
Was that pause for effect?
That pause was because I lost my train of thought for a second.
I thought it was for effect, and I thought it was powerful.
Well, then I'm going to do it more often. I'm going to work it into the old repertoire here. But Dom Hamel is a guy with elite spin rates. It was a thing in the draft 2 years ago in 2021. That was a very, very popular buzzword. Talk about the way that that his repertoire was, and he had it on full display. So a guy who, after spending all of last year at Double-A with the Rumble Ponies, we can forecast will likely start the year in Triple-A. That would be the natural ascension for Dom Hamel. The Mets using him in that intra-squad game, the kickoff spring training last year, really talked about their high hopes for Dom Hamel. Of course, he hit Mark Canha, which Mark Canha was kind of a magnet for being hit. But Dom Hamel is a guy that Mets fans should absolutely know about. He had a fantastic 2023 season. Very excited to see what 2024 holds for the young right-hander.
Now let's talk about Tyler Stewart. Biggest thing about Tyler Stewart this year, 2.2 ERA, was the second lowest among all minor league pitchers this year. And for most of the season, he actually held that number 1 spot up until he got promoted, which you're going to see some change when you get promoted to the next level. It's crazy that he was even able to stay in that second spot throughout the entire season. Allowed 2 runs or less in each of his 15 starts this season. And he's a dominating 6'9", which John and I did an interview with him. You can see that on the Mets YouTube page and on this podcast. We did it in Brooklyn, and we did it standing up. And he towered over us.
He did. But that 6'9", Tyler Stewart gets incredible extension. What we mean by that is where a pitcher releases the ball, how close they get to the batter, that changes the perceived velocity of a pitch, and it's really tough for a batter to make a good swing decision having less time while the ball is in flight. Tyler Stewart's a guy that we've seen him have big strikeout games, but he's a guy that is a dominant ground ball thrower, a ground ball rate of over 50%. He's a guy that works that slider, over 50% usage of the slider. So his secondary stuff he's very confident in. He sinks the ball very well. And he'll be 24 all year next year. He's a guy that was used as a reliever in college at times, a starter, a guy that has a Tommy John surgery behind him, and of course there's always a failure rate whenever you go under the knife with a surgery as serious as Tommy John. Tyler Stewart surpasses innings limit last year, very much so like Christian Scott, another one of those guys, Vito, that could be used as a reliever at some point in the major league, during the major league system for the Mets. He is a really, really great asset, another one of the breakout stars in the system last year, and big things ahead for Tyler Stewart in 2024.
Yeah, and Tyler Stewart, like John mentioned, just like Christian Scott, more innings than he'd ever had this year and still was able to just pitch at an insane rate and seemingly just not slow down. Let's talk about one of the biggest names, I would say, in our system, Blade Tidwell. I think most fans are familiar with Blade at this point. Another college guy like the first 4 starting pitchers we've talked about, turning 23 in June, started the year at AAA, promoted to AA, helping that Rumble Ponies playoff push that we just talked so much about. And in his last 12 starts in Brooklyn, John, a 1.56 ERA. Just had a really dominant season this year.
Yeah, whenever Blade Tidwell was on the mound for the Cyclones, it was must-watch stuff. He was outstanding. Now, this is a guy who lives at the top of the strike zone with his fastball. And what that is, when a fastball doesn't drop, obviously over time, gravity will take any object down that's in motion. It's induced vertical break, and that is the rising effect that you see on a fastball. And Blade Tidwell excels in this. He pounds the top of the strike zone with the fastball, but he has 3 other secondary pitches, and they're all plus pitches. The slider that generates tons of whiff, a really good curveball with vertical break, the pitch that falls off the table, and a changeup that he had some great results with in 2023, a pitch he told us that he was really working on to make himself an even more well-rounded pitcher. He was a guy in the 2022 draft that many, many draft pundits thought could be a first-rounder. He fell to the Mets in the second round. The Mets were thrilled to have gotten a pitcher of his caliber there. We talked to Blade at spring training. He told us about the chip on his shoulder that he carries. We said point blank, Blade, did 29 other teams mess up? And what did he say to us, Vito?
He said no comment.
He said no comment, and that was a comment. That was a yes. So he got the challenge of going to Binghamton last year later in the season. We got to talk to him in Binghamton as well.
And you know what? In Binghamton, I think we both talked about this, the increasing confidence we saw from our conversation with him in spring training.
100%.
In spring training, he wore sunglasses. It was probably one of the first interviews he'd done. Was still still a great conversation. It was still really fun to talk to him, but you could tell he wasn't the Blade Tidwell that we spoke to in Binghamton, who was just pure confidence, came out. And the difference in scenario shows you how confident he is. Spring training, we were just having a conversation on the backfield.
Yep.
Pretty low pressure, nothing going on. At Binghamton, we talked to Blade. He was wearing his uniform. He walked over in full cleats on the concourse with fans in the arena, 2 of the players back in the background. And just the confidence we saw from that kid was so exciting to see. I really just can't wait to see what he does this year.
Yeah, and down the stretch, he was really good. Of his 8 starts with the Rumble Ponies, he allowed 2 or fewer runs in 5 of them. 3 of them are scoreless. And for me, one of the biggest things was that whenever Blade did have a little bit of a misstep, especially going to AA, he always bounced back. He never brought a bad start out with him to the mound the next time he went out there. And that's what you love to see, is the ability to shake it off, the ability to make adjustments. When you advance a league, they're going to adjust to you, they being the hitters. You have to adjust back, and Blade Tidwell did that. He knows he has stuff of a bad MFer. I could say that, right?
You can.
I could say that. It's a holiday episode.
The kids say AF.
They do. So
the kids say they say MF like you could say Blade Tidwell MF8.
What is MF8?
8 means like that MF8. Like he ate. Like 8 means good. 8 means like, oh, that's like, he like did really well. Like he ate that up.
Okay, when you say he ate that up, yeah. Oh, the MF8. I got it.
Yeah.
Like the MF8.
Exactly.
Got it. I thought it was just okay, now I get it.
We're both in our 30s.
I'm old. You definitely speak more Gen Z.
I do.
You speak a lot of Gen Z.
I live in both worlds, you know?
Yeah, I don't.
No.
I don't at all.
He's basically...
I'm drifting.
He's a boomer.
I'm gone. I'm long gone. But Blade Tidwell's not long gone. I think Blade Tidwell, he's Gen Z, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody we're talking about is Gen Z.
Turns 23 in June, by the way, so still a youngster. A lot of path ahead of him.
Something I want to bring up about Blade Tidwell that we spoke to him about in that interview, I asked him about how in a lot of games we'd see him like on a dominant tear, and then maybe like 1 or 2 guys gets on base, and then something in him snaps, and then in that moment on like 3-4 pitchers, he'll just get a guy out. Just like it seems almost effortless after he just hits a quick hiccup. And you remember what he said?
So the pressure's on the hitter, right?
He said the pressure's on the hitter, and he said he likes that feeling of his back up against the wall.
Well, he showed it all year. Blade Tidwell, absolutely keep an eye on him. Likely starts the year in Double-A. We don't know. It's not even 2024
yet. We also
yet.
don't know anything.
We don't. Yeah, no, we're not. We're not trying to make projections here, just based off of, I guess, common knowledge, common sense. A guy that came up late in the year at Double-A could very well see him, especially with a lot of guys kind of quote unquote ahead of him, and that's only because the Mets have so many good young starters that are coming up the pipeline. Who do we have next, Vito?
Next, we have Wander Suarez, the 23-year-old from Venezuela. Had an incredible final 4 starts of the year, one with Brooklyn, his last 3 with Binghamton. He allowed 4 hits in a period of 24 innings where it was just complete shutout baseball. A wild turnaround for him. Struggled somewhat through June, but really got it together.
Yeah, he came on like I don't even know how to put it, what he did late in the season, especially after he was promoted. He threw a 7-inning no-hitter, which was fantastic. He was Eastern League Pitcher of the Week in back-to-back weeks. He was one of the biggest strikeout pitchers in minor league baseball from July through the end of the season. He struck out 82 batters in 62 2/3 innings of work. He's a guy that throws a lot of strikes. He mixes speeds well, and he gets a lot of chase by keeping guys off balance. He doesn't throw overwhelmingly hard, but he's seemingly always one step ahead of opposing hitters. So he's another guy that kind of came on late. Coming on like gangbusters was the expression I was looking for.
Gangbusters.
And it just didn't come to me. Sometimes it happens, you know.
Ghostbusters.
You're looking for the expression. It's not there. You got to pull a quick audible in the brain, and then it comes to you. You slide it in. I just slid it in with the gangbusters. But another guy that had Tommy John surgery back in 2021, a full recovery, a guy who the Mets penciled him in late in the year. They gave him big starts for the Rumble Ponies as they were looking to make the playoffs, get in the playoffs. He was a big part of that. Jordan Geber, another guy that came seemingly out of nowhere, went up to Binghamton, had some big starts. Talk about Jeebs in a little bit.
Later.
He very well might. But, yeah, Suarez had a great turnaround, like you said, Vito, and one of these guys who doesn't throw overwhelmingly hard, but he's got pitchability, as the kids like to say. So a lot of big things.
Wait, do the kids like to say that?
Oh, I like to say that, so I just said that. But
I wouldn't say that that's like an 8 term.
No, it's not a Gen Z thing, but pitchability for sure. That's how I would describe Suarez. Very much so like Luis Moreno, who also...
Transition.
That's right. Luis Moreno, who just like Suarez, was also at one point Eastern League Pitcher of the Week. He won that award for the week of June 19th to 25. Right now he's pitching in winter ball in the lead-om, so keep an eye on that, how he's doing down there. But
This is a long one.
This is a long one, but Moreno was really, really good in a 6-start span from June through July. He had a 1.41 ERA, the FIP that matched it, didn't allow a home run, a strikeout rate over 33%. And so just another one of the very many arms the Mets have in the system who at some point, whether as a starter or a reliever, could make an impact right here in this building we're sitting at, good old Citi Field.
We are at Citi Field.
Or on the road somewhere in the major leagues, I don't know.
That's a good point. You don't know where he's going to debut.
Well, we got to ask all these guys what their song's going to be, right?
We've been doing that.
We've got a pretty good catalog.
We do. We have a good catalog, mostly Rihanna.
There's a lot of Rihanna.
It's a lot of Rihanna.
I don't know if that's a Gen Z thing or what.
I think that's an everybody.
It can't be a Gen Z thing. How many songs has Rihanna come out with in the last, I don't know.
Well, she hasn't had an album in a while.
That's what I'm saying.
But she's still Rihanna. I mean, she's been...
Does her music just stand the test of time?
Yeah, but dude, she's been putting out music for a long time. Do you remember she was in Bring It On 2? Or was it 3? She was in 2 or 3.
I didn't know what... That's the cheerleading movie, right?
Yeah. She was in one of them. She was in one of them. She was featured musician in one of them. I think she's been doing music for a long time, dude. I mean, it makes sense. She has the catalog. Let's move on, though. Enough about Rihanna.
No more Rihanna.
No more Rihanna, but we do like Rihanna. I do like Rihanna. I thought it was actually a fantastic Super Bowl performance. A lot of people A lot of people were weird about it. I was screaming at people at my Super Bowl party. It's a Fosse-inspired dance routine. Stop being judgmental. Now, let's talk about somebody that we got to spend time with in Arizona, Nolan Clenny, a guy I think we both really got to like. Kid with a really good head on his shoulders. 1 earned run allowed in 9 innings in AFL ball. We were there. The kid was tuned in, split his time between AA and AAA in the regular season. He played some indie ball, is now with the Mets system, and he's just made that one step from the indie ball to the Mets player development system. And, that's just one step from the major leagues at this point at AAA, right?
Yeah, Nolan's been a great story. He's overcome a lot in his career, like you mentioned, playing indie ball. Now, one step away from the big leagues, topped out at AAA last year, great Arizona Fall League. And the big thing with Nolan Clenny is how much whiff there is in that arm. Forget the ERA. Forget all this. Forget the ERA. When you see a strikeout rate of over 35%, that's something that catches your attention. Yep. That's not easy to do, and that's what Nolan Clenny did last year. So we had a really good conversation with Nolan and his roommates, Trey McLaughlin, who we'll talk about in a second, and JT Schwartz. This is kind of the reliever section now, or the true reliever section, because
you could call this the bullpen.
You could call this the bullpen. This kind of is a call to the bullpen. But yeah, Nolan Clenny's a guy that could definitely help the Mets in the bullpen this upcoming season after a really, really strong 2023 campaign, followed up by a great Arizona Fall League against some of the best talent amongst all of his peers. So Nolan Clenny, keep an eye out on Nolan.
Next up on the list is Trey McLaughlin. Trey McLaughlin, you could call him a local guy being from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I think Connecticut is part of local. If I have a ton of friends who are from Connecticut.
Well, it depends what part it is.
It depends, but I mean, I'm just going to say, look, I'm a New York guy. I hear Connecticut. I look at Connecticut like Rhode Island. I basically think it's one big town.
Rhode Island's, that's far.
I know.
This is my.
No, I don't mean far away. I mean, I look at Connecticut as just like some little small town.
This is my definition of it.
I know it's not.
If extraterrestrial New York radio goes out to where you are in Connecticut, then you're.
Wait, what'd you call it?
Extra or not extraterrestrial?
Terrestrial. Talking about aliens.
Yeah, not extraterrestrial.
Not alien ET radio.
No, just terrestrial.
Terrestrial radio.
If you're getting WFAN or whatever in your town in Connecticut, you're part of the tri-state area. If you're not, you're out of the club.
What if we started calling it the tri-state area and like you're part of the tribe?
Well, that's a totally different thing.
No, I just mean like you're like the tribe of New Yorkers.
Oh, okay, got it.
Like the Guardians used to call themselves the tribe because they were all.
Well, that's also a different thing.
That's also a different thing.
Yeah. Well, Trey's from Bridgeport, so I think that's I think it's technically tri-state area.
And you know why I think it's cool to call him a local guy? Because you hear Connecticut, you see Connecticut, you're going to think Yankee fan. You're going to go. He's probably a Yankee fan because it's up there. Mm-hmm. Good news. He's not a Mets fan, but he's not a Yankee fan either. He grew up a Red Sox fan.
Which makes sense.
Makes sense, and it's cool with us. Remember the Met Sox?
Yeah, I do. Trey's a Stag, by the way. Go Stag. That's Fairfield University.
I went to
mascot.
Xavier High School, and that was their
the Stags?
Fairfield prep. The Rams. They're the Rams.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I never heard of a Stag before Fairfield.
But Fairfield is... Oh, I was thinking about Fordham. I'm so wrong.
Fordham is the Rams.
Fordham is the Rams. Fairfield is the Stags. Yeah.
Yeah, Fordham's in the Bronx.
Fordham is in the Bronx. I'm mixing everything up there.
You are. Well, Trey was another guy that we got to spend time with at the Arizona Fall League, and he told us about his bread and butter. If you missed it, check it out on the Mets YouTube page or one of the very many clips on @MetsPlayerDev on Twitter, wherever you get your Mets content. But it's the splitter, and it's a pitch that Trey did not have in college that he started throwing in the Mets player development system, and it really became his go-to pitch, one of his big weapons, and he used it very well in the AFL with 9 scoreless outings during his time in Arizona, allowed just 4 hits. He's still 24, turns 25 in June, and the biggest thing about Trey
is that he's getting married.
Congrats to Trey. That's not what I was going to go with. No, but I hope the pictures went well. I think he was.
He was getting ready to go, and I saw some.
Oh, okay.
I saw some on his Instagram. Trey, they turned out great, dude. You killed it.
Good job, Trey. I had no doubts. And by the way, his fiance a big Seahawks fan.
She is,
and she's kind of converting Trey. I mean, Trey's a Jet fan, so.
Oh yeah, Trey probably had a blast as of the recording last night.
That's where I was going to go.
First flexed game in Monday Night Football history.
Oh, was it flexed?
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
It was not originally a Monday Night Football game. It was the first game ever flexed into Monday Night Football.
And a great 2017 win with a backup quarterback for the Seahawks. But you guys didn't come here for Seahawks talk. You came for the Mets.
Seahawks talk. That would be a good name for a show. Damn
it. But anyway, the big number I was going to say about Trey, or not the big number, but the big thing to know is that he is as effective against lefties. He's a righty thrower, as he is against righties. He pitched almost evenly against both. So the platoon matchup with Trey on the mound, it doesn't matter. That splitter down the way to the lefties, untouchable. He's got a good fastball with ride to the righties, good break. So Trey McLaughlin, another guy that Mets fans should keep an eye out. It's all about developing relievers, Vito. This is such an overlooked but such an important part about winning baseball, and the Mets have a lot of options coming up through the farm system. Trey McLaughlin's another one of those options.
And let's talk about Daniel Juarez right now, the 23-year-old lefty reliever. Throws a fastball known to some as the Invisible.
That's right.
Great name. I think one thing we've learned, any ball that has a name, any pitch that has a name, it's cool. It's cool as hell.
It is cool.
It's cool AH. And that ball gets a lot of whiffs. It's a pitch that has induced vertical break about 20 inches on the average, which is MLB elite.
Yeah, so pretty much what that means, as I was explaining before, is fastballs, when they leave the hand, or any pitch really, gravity is going to eventually make that pitch fall. If you can fight gravity by getting enough rotation on the pitch out of the hand, it doesn't drop as much. So you compare it to the league average of where the balls are eventually dropping to. Juarez's fastball doesn't drop that much. It actually stays. It has that quote-unquote ride, especially coming from the left side. A very, very...
That was brought to you by Taylor. Can this be seen in the shot? This was brought to you by John Nye, the science guy.
Juarez, the invisible, the fastball just pops. It rides up and in against the lefties, away from the righties. And he's also a guy that just pounds the strike zone, throws a ton of strikes, walked just 18 of 226 guys faced in 2023. For a while, he had a streak where he didn't walk anybody. I remember that was a thing that you and I were talking about frequently during the summer, and he's effective against both lefties and righties. So the first lefty we've mentioned here in the conversation so far, pitched Double-A last year, a guy that could be a Triple-A easily next year, possibly help the Mets in the majors at some point. Daniel Juarez, out of the bullpen, the invisible. Remember it.
You know what I smell?
What's that?
I smell breadsticks. You know why?
Because we got a former Olive Garden employee to talk about.
And we got to talk about the breadstick guy, Paul Gervase, as he told us his nickname was, the breadstick guy, because he was an Olive Garden waiter, because that's how he worked himself through college to get himself to all of these pitching clinics and really work on his game. Paul Gervase, 38.6% K rate, was top 10 in all minor league baseball with a minimum of 50 innings pitched. He's a guy that can come in and just about mow down the order one time through, turns 24 in May, and in 2022, draft pick from LSU, who does a fantastic Coach O impression, I would say.
He does a fantastic Coach O impression.
John, you've said publicly you didn't think it was that good.
I told him to his face I thought it was like 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
I don't think that... I think that there was a game that day.
There was.
And he was hot, which means that he was possibly going to pitch.
Yes.
So, it's a lot of diaphragm work, and I would want him to hold some of that back to just unleash that FU four-seamer, that FU slider that Paul mows through the lineup with.
You had no hesitation about FU.
Yeah, that's because it's fine, I think.
But it's just funny. You even wrote down FU. You had no hesitation about FU.
That's what it is.
Before MF scared you.
Well, you told me that was okay.
I did know. I'm saying I'm just surprised that you were planning to say FU, but you were on the fence about MF.
Well, I think that it's a good way to really put it in perspective.
Yeah, cursing is cool.
What kind of stuff this guy has.
Can I say cursing is cool? I don't think I can say cursing is cool. Cursing is not cool, kids.
Paul Gervase was a force to be reckoned with last season. He helped the Rumble Ponies in the playoffs after he started so dominantly with the Brooklyn Cyclones of the South Atlantic League. Like Tyler Stewart, a 6'10 pitcher. So we interviewed both of those guys on the same day. You talked about how we stood with Tyler. We stood with Paul as well, and we felt short in both interviews, but the extension once again comes into play with Paul Gervase like Tyler Stewart. He's just on top of batters, and with the break, the sweep on that slider, especially to the righties down and away, right-handed hitters have no time to try to pick up that slider, and he tunnels the pitch the same way he tunnels the four-seamer, making it even tougher for hitters to have swing decisions against Paul Gervase. And Binghamton used him in a way that I would love to see him continue to be used. I loved what they did, and that was put him in the game and let him maybe go one time through the order. And just, for a guy as dominant as he was last year, obviously he'll continue to face better and better competition, so more challenges ahead for Paul. But you can almost just set it and forget it one time through, 9 of 27 outs. he's reliable like that because he is so dominant. He was like that all year long, as you mentioned. The strikeout rate close to 40%, that's Edwin Diaz type stuff from 2022. Paul Gervase is a very, very exciting young arm that could really help this Mets bullpen sooner than later, and a fantastic 2023 season.
Now we're going to move on because we only have 2 guys left, and we wanted to keep this short, but you know how my best friend is. You know how this guy is. Once you get this guy started, he's not going to stop, and that's why you guys love his information. Now we're going to talk about another one of the Arizona Fall League boys. Somebody we got to know in Arizona. Surprisingly, actually after we finished an interview, we got to learn even more about him because he came up and told us some stuff. Jordan Gieber, a very low-key guy, but a guy Mets fans should know. Undrafted, played college at Mount St. Mary's and then Virginia Tech, and he's overcome a lot. He was in a bad car accident that left him with a concussion, and he had to relearn a lot of basic skills. But, John, why don't you tell the people about why Mets fans should know him on a pitching level?
Well, he started the year with Brooklyn. He missed 2 months, had a torn oblique, so after he kind of got past the concussion issues, had another setback, but he came on strong late in the season, especially with the Rumble Ponies of Double-A. 18 scoreless innings over 3 starts. It was 3 starts, 6 innings each. No runs allowed. Then he went to the Arizona Fall League, a guy that pitched in college. The Mets really kind of wanted to give him another challenge, especially with so much time missed during the regular season. And he answered the call. He had an especially strong strong finish to the Fall League. A guy with a 4-seam fastball, a slider, and a cutter with really good late break, especially in on the lefties. And he's another guy that can help out of the bullpen. He's kind of a swing man. Think about when Robert Gesellman and Seth Lugo both came up in 2016. The Mets, I could foresee this guy, Jordan Gieber, being used in a similar capacity, and a guy that's very willing to do that. He spoke with us. He doesn't really mind how he's used. He's a change of pace guy from the right side, a bit of a herky-jerky pitcher. So another one of these very, very numerous arms down in the Mets player development system that could help in 2024. That's the name of the game here. That's the theme. And it's almost 40 minutes already, we were just told, but that's because there are so many guys to talk about.
And we're going to wrap this episode up with Nate Lavender.
Oh, yeah.
Nate, what's a fun thing about Nate Lavender?
Well, he's a Big Ten guy. He pitched at U of I, University of Illinois. Myself, also a Big Ten guy.
You messed up your own slogan, dude.
Big Ten guy like myself. I didn't want to deliver it the same way.
But that's your thing. Urkel didn't stop saying, did I do that? Urkel didn't say, was it me who did that?
I think one time there was a remixed version of it.
There was no remix of that. And speaking of Urkel, Nate Lavender, also a really smart guy. History and poli-sci major at U of I.
No, it's no Indiana University, but it'll do.
It's no SVA, School of Visual Arts in New York City.
Definitely not. I know someone that went there too, than you.
Appeared in 5 spring training games in 2023, allowing no runs. Was often available to back up in case someone went shorter than planned. And in his free time, he would go to Pop Stroke with his family.
That's right. Now, you mentioned the backup thing, and that kind of sounds like, well, what does that mean? It means that there are always guys that are quote-unquote in reserve for Major League spring training games. If a pitcher goes out there, they've got pitch limits, right? You know, in spring training especially, we're not trying to complete innings. We're trying to hit a certain pitch count. So if a guy throws more pitches than anticipated or doesn't get through as many innings of work as anticipated and throws more pitches, then what are we going to do now? We kind of have a set schedule in spring training, who's pitching, how many pitches are they going to throw. Well, Nate Lavender was a guy that was often used and ready to go in the case of someone didn't complete as many innings or didn't retire as many batters. And he said that he really learned a lot from that, being down in the bullpen on the Major League side, in the dugout on the Major League side, in the clubhouse on the Major League side. So it shows the Mets were really confident in Lavender's ability to come in and get Major League hitters out, albeit in spring training games. He's a guy with a low arm slot, helps him be very effective against right-handed hitters, obviously very good against the lefty as well. 86 strikeouts in 54 and a third innings of work. And he's one of the guys, especially out of the bullpen, who could be one of the first to contribute at the Major League level for a couple of reasons. Number one is experience. He pitched a lot of last year at AAA. Number two, he's a college guy. And, of course, number three, throws with his left hand. I'm thinking about tying my daughter's right hand behind her arm so she becomes a lefty-dominant thrower. She could be the first Major League pitcher, female, ever, especially if I do that.
We don't know. I mean, there's time.
Oh, it could happen. It could happen. But throwing with the left hand, and they say catching, the 2 quickest ways to the majors.
Well, let's wrap this one up for you all. Have yourself a Merry Christmas. We did a Christmas episode today because today is December 25th. Wanted to give you guys a little gift. That was the 12 Pictures of Christmas. And we'll see you all in the future. And
happy holidays. Let's go Mets.
And enjoy the stock music.
I forgot.
Merry Christmas.